Hey, it's Andrew here at BTO Range, Conroe, Texas, back with a fairly rare, at the very least uncommon, little Savage shotgun here. This is a Savage Model 242, the Model 242. It's an over and under shotgun in 410, but it's unlike any other over and under shotgun, to my knowledge, that's ever been made because it has this exposed hammer. So it has a little bit of a unique operating system that we'll talk about here in just a second. But these guns were made for only 4 years. They were made from 1977 to 1981. And they're a variant of the Savage Model 24, which is traditionally a combination gun rifle barrel over a shotgun, which were made in a number of different variants. Started out as the Stevens 22-410, and then the various Savage calibers, or Savage variations of that, with either 410 or 20 gauge shotgun barrel, and then rimfire rifle barrels on top. And then there were centerfire models, 222, 30-30, 357 maximum centerfire rifle variants. But they did make a double shotgun variant, and that's what this gun is, the Model 242. There was an earlier variant of this gun called the Model 240, and that was a pre-World War II over and under shotgun, which was even more unique than this one because instead of one hammer, it had two hammers, one firing the lower barrel, one firing the upper barrel with two triggers. And then when the 242 was brought out in 1977, they went with this single hammer, single trigger, and it has this barrel selector as part of the hammer. So let's go ahead and clear it before we start messing with it anymore. So like a typical break shotgun, it breaks from the top. This single extractor powers both the over and under barrel. So there's no selective ejectors or ejectors at all, actually. It's just an extractor, and it extracts both the fired cases and unfired rounds. So the gun's got 24-inch barrels choked full and full, and I've never seen anything different in a 242. They've always been 24-inch choked full and full with a simple bead sight on the front. Now the 240 had more rifle sights similar to what you would expect from one of the Model 24 combination gun variants to be. So let's discuss one of the reasons why this gun was never so popular. It's an over and under shotgun just in style alone, but in reality, it is two single shot 410s blended into one gun, one on top of the other, because the barrels do not automatically select to the next round. So the gun has to be manually cocked each time you fire it, and you have to change that selector. So it's not very quick to run off a second shot. There is a way to do it more quickly than others than it would seem, and that would be when you first load the gun to select the bottom barrel. So the selector's here, and you can see this is the part that contacts the firing pin. So that would be for the lower barrel, that would be for the upper barrel. So if you started out here, rebounding hammer, so that's not, it cannot contact the firing pin unless the trigger is pulled. So it's blocked there. So you would start this way, and then when you fired the first shot, bang, and then you would have to cock the hammer again. Instead of coming to the hammer spur, this is knurled here. So grab it by the selector and then cock them both at the same time. So by cocking the hammer, you would also select the upper barrel in the same motion. That's the most efficient way to get the second shot off with one of these 242 shotguns. Still not nearly as fast as an internal hammer gun with either mechanical or inertial selector, but that is what it is. So still a very safe gun. So how do we go about dating one of these guns? Well, it's difficult. Prior to 1968, anything in the Savage 24 line with the exception of the centerfire guns, and I don't think they were made before, so I don't know, we'd have to see. Typically were not serialized, but they did have that Savage date code consisting of a number and a letter in an oval. But once they started putting serial numbers on them, in January of 1969, when it was mandated by the Gun Control Act of '68, Savage began using letter prefixes. And we can generally date, there's a known month and year when a certain letter prefix started and when the next letter prefix started. So that chart can be found online. This particular gun has a C prefix to the serial number. So that C prefix was used from September of 1975 to February of 1979 is when the C prefix for the serial number was used. And we know this gun wasn't introduced until 1977. So it's safe to assume that it was going to be before, between that 77 through 79, and probably 78 would be a good, safe guess as to year of manufacture for this gun. It may be late 77, could conceivably be very early 79, but it's probably 1978. So that's kind of as close as we're going to get without trying to get Savage to give us the information, which may be possible with a phone call. So if that's worth doing, I mean, 78 is probably close enough, right? So how do you evaluate one of these guns? Is the same thing we've always talked about on any of these is scarcity, originality, and condition. The 242 is relatively scarce, only 4 years of production and relatively low production during those 4 years. I don't have an exact number of how many of these guns were made. It is a low number comparative to the other versions of the Model 24. It just never was that big of a seller, and it did not last very long. So they're uncommon, at least. So originality, 24-inch barrels. It would be hard to cut these barrels down because they're separated, right? So if you cut them down too far, you would have to have some kind of barrel block put back in there to hold the barrels, to stabilize the barrels at the muzzle end. So they're 24-inch barrels, bead sight. That's the way it should be. The stocks have not been replaced. The one thing that has been replaced on this gun is this pad here. This would have had a composite hard plastic butt plate with the Savage name on it. This particular one has a softer rubber rifle style pad with the Western Field, Montgomery Ward's Western Field name on the back of it. So at some point someone put a rubber pad on this gun. It's relatively well done. There's a little bit of fitting error down here at the toe, but way better than most of the jobs I've seen with that. But we do have a 14-inch length of pull from the trigger to the rear of the pad here, or the butt plate, if you will. So we still have an adult length of pull. It's not been grossly shortened, so that doesn't really hurt it that much, to be honest with you. So we're pretty comfortable with the originality of the gun. The condition of this particular gun leaves a little bit to be desired. It does have some significant surface rust, but I believe that the majority of that is going to be cleanable. We just got it, and most of the guns that we bring here to the channel, we recent purchases, like within the last few days before we shoot this video, because we found that once we clean them up and put them out on the rack, they're gone. So you get them got kind of in their raw, untouched up version here on camera, which may or may not be the best thing, but we're not trying to sell guns on YouTube. Attention YouTube, we're not trying to sell guns on YouTube. So be that as it may, the gun's going to be cleanable and it'll look okay. These receivers on these guns, Savage marketed these as case colored. It's not bone and charcoal case color. It's the faux cyanide based case color that Savage used at the time. Really not very reproducible. We don't do the cyanide case color for obvious reasons, but we can clean this up and it'll be respectable. And we could We could make a faux case color using heat, but probably going to clean up well enough without having to do that. The rest of this is just surface rust that'll clean up and probably be really presentable. There's a lot of scratches here on the stock that we believe that we can. We use a rubbing compound really to clean up the stocks quite a bit, and that does a good job for us without having to go to the time and expense of cleaning the stocks. That said, these are walnut, so we're not going to have a problem with having to completely restain a stock or anything like that. There is stain on this stock. It's a lighter walnut than other stuff, but it's not the hardwood stock that Savage used on some other guns. So the other thing that you would look at as far as condition goes is the mechanical condition, particularly the firing pins, right? So you look at the bore, obviously these have 3-inch chambers, so they'll shoot 2.5 or 3-inch shells. So the way you would check that without firing it is pretty easily done. And by the way, this will open to either side, right or left, does not matter. So we're going to open this up, and we're going to check for firing pin protrusion through the breech face by holding the trigger to the rear to clear that block, and then we're going to press the hammer forward, and we can see the firing pin protruding, the lower firing pin protruding through the breech face, and then we're going to go to the upper barrel, and we're going to do the same, and we have the upper barrel protruding through the breech face. So we're happy that the gun doesn't have broken firing pins. That said, the firing pins are held in place by 2 very small screws that go through the receiver from this side. These can be problematic because they're super tiny. And if they've corroded in place, it's easy to tear out the screw slot. And then they become a real bear to get those out. So if you ever have to take these out, I would suggest before even attempting to take them out, just go ahead and soak them in penetrating oil overnight before you even attempt to take the screw out. And then possibly a little heat and bring the screw on out. Try to maximize your chances of success the first time through. Otherwise, the action is pretty similar to the Model 24 on the inside. And the Model 24 in and of itself really needs its own video because there are so many different sub-variants of that gun that we could do several videos depending on whether it had the selector down here, whether it had the selector and the hammer, or how they did that. So that brings us to a discussion about how this gun is marked. The gun is marked Savage 242 Series C. And there's a Series C and a Series D in this gun. I don't believe they went past D. So, and you'll see that series marking on virtually all of the Savage models from the 60s on through, not necessarily current because they've gone away from a lot of the model numbers, but certainly through the 2000s, you'll see series numbers. It's particularly prevalent in the rimfire guns. And typically all that means in Savage is that there's some feature difference or feature change. Maybe they change the geometry of a firing pin, or maybe they change some of the selector mechanism has changed, or there's some type of change that makes for a parts difference inside the gun. Some parts interchange from series to series, some parts do not. So I don't know of any reference source that lists your manufacturer by series. It may be out there and I'm just not aware of it, but the way I've always dated Savage is either by the date code on the pre-69 guns or the letter prefix on the post or on the serialized guns, the post-69 guns or post-GCA 68 guns, either way you want to look at it. So one other thing you want to look at on these guns in particular, and this is going to pertain to any of the Savage single shot type actions that have these scallops here in the side of the receiver, whether it's a Model 24, the Model 94, this 242, or any of those, is take a good look at the wood condition in this scallop, because what happens is if this stock bolt comes loose for whatever reason, or the stock bolt begins to loosen up and there's flex here in this joint, then you can start to see some stress cracks develop, like this little guy right here. There's a small stress crack right here. I would not too concerned about it unless it starts to come all the way up here, and then we'll see it chip out this top part of this stock. So the good news is these stocks generally interchange between the 24 series, 242, and most of the 94 series. Where the difference is going to be is the checkering pattern and things like this pistol grip cap. So I don't believe it's not marked for a 242, but some of the Savage 24 stocks have that. Most of the 94s do not. And then there's a lot of stocks that are being remade to fit this pattern. So the trigger guards will be the same. There's a lot of similarity in parts between the 24 and the 242. And some of the 94 shotgun parts will fit on here. So the only marking we have here is the serial number with that C prefix. The model number, the marking on top of the top barrel. So another thing that you would want to look at is the way this gun takes down. There's no button or anything to push. This just is spring tensioned on. And then the barrels just come off like that. So we're going to take a look and make sure that we have spring tension here, good solid spring tension. This is the spring that actually holds the forend to the barrel. This end of this spring fits into this notch right here and compresses as you close the forend onto it. So that's what keeps the tension there. It's actually held in place by a 4-inch spring, a wire spring that comes up behind that. So you want to make sure that that is that's in place. These two screws here, this screw that's visible here has nothing to do with the takedown of the gun. It's only holding the front of the forend iron in place in the forend. So make sure that this plastic piece is not chipped out or broken, but that's being remade and it's replaceable. It's the 94 series part, so that's fine. So these extractors are kind of spring-loaded. And we're just making sure that we're not missing any screws or parts or anything like that. There's not significant rust in this block here. So that said, we're pretty happy with the overall mechanical condition of the gun. We're going to make sure that our locking block goes back and forth like it should. We're going to make sure we don't have any significant chips or cracks here in this very narrow part here on the corner, but it's unusual to see that happen. These are not hardened. These are mild steel or mild iron alloy receivers. So they're case hardened, or the faux case hardening on the receiver, but it's a good idea just to take a look at all that. So we're fairly comfortable with the way this gun is put together. Our firing pin or our hammer rebound, hammer lock works. The spring that pushes the hammer back works. So we're comfortable that the gun is mechanically sound, that we don't need to get inside of it to do anything significant. So we're happy with the mechanics of it. So what do these guns go for? What realistically can you expect to pay for a 242? Well, the prices have gone up on these guns because of their low production. And if you find one that's complete, it is almost certainly going to be $400. Really nice ones go $700 to $1,000, and they actually get that money for it. If you look at some of the auction sales that have completed on 242s, they're actually bringing that kind of money. So it can be an undervalued item. If you find it on the used gun rack of your local gun shop or pawn shop, they may very well be undervalued because it's a Savage and not, a big expensive name. So that's one of the jewels that you can look out for, either the 240 or the 242, either one. And any of the 24s really are starting to get, especially in high condition or centerfire calibers, are beginning to get rather expensive. So it's a good gun to look out for. The usability of the gun, and as far as a shooter guide, I don't know that I'd take it dove hunting. There are far better platforms out there to do that with because of having to manually cock this hammer and select the second barrel each and every time. So there's probably a better platform for that out there. But that said, it's still a good squirrel getter, good rabbit getter, good overall general shooter. And definitely watch out for them. They're worth buying if you can get them at the right price. So that's a Savage 242, little unusual little gun. I haven't seen one in years, and this one just happened to come through the store, so we grabbed it. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a bunch. We appreciate all the support we've gotten so far, for sure. Drop us a line in the comments. We try to answer as many of them as we can, and we try to be responsive to people that say, hey, can you do a video on model XYZ? We try to get a hold of one and do that for you. So that said, appreciate you watching, and have a good day.